We need to talk about camera control. It's the latest and greatest hyped up feature on the new iPhone 16 smartphones, and I'm going to be honest guys, I think it might be the most gimmicky and empty feature that I've used in a long time, and there's a lot to unpack here. So that's what we're going to be talking about, the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Let's talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and I'm not going to waste your time. The iPhone 16 Pro Max is not a huge upgrade on its predecessor. In fact, there actually isn't a lot different. It's marginally faster, it's slightly larger, the bezels are a hair thinner, the ultra-wide camera has an upgrade, and Apple has improved battery life. But all the headlines and all the marketing, aside from the Apple Intelligence stuff, are pointing towards this little button on the side. Apple's calling it camera control, and it's essentially a pressure sensitive pad with a button beneath it. You can use it to swipe between modes in the camera app to zoom in and out. Apple announced that you could also half press it to lock focus like a real camera or like a Sony Xperia. However, this is coming in an update and isn't here at launch, which is like, okay, why? But there are a number of concerns or maybe questions I have regarding this camera control feature. Firstly, it's quite poorly placed on the phone, like it's not exactly where your finger would naturally go when holding it in portrait or in landscape. It's kind of an awkward middle ground. And it's awkward not only to press with your finger, but also to swipe up and down if you were to use the camera control feature. And then there's the actual usage of it. I found it's quite actually unintuitive to use, as you need to initially half press it to bring up the slider and then move around with a swipe. And the elephant in the room here is that Apple absolutely nailed its zooming setup with the old way of doing things. The whole idea that you can use your thumb and easily switch between all of the lenses, work through them really nicely. It's so incredible, and it's so good in fact that other smartphones have it too. It's easy, it's intuitive, it works amazingly, so why did we have to reinvent the wheel here? It just makes no logical sense to me. As someone who is constantly, and I really do mean constantly, double tapping the power button on a phone to access the camera, I do like that you can now single press this to open up the camera on here, but it doesn't work every single time. And that's one of the other issues. But then there's also the fact that they incorporated the action button with lots of shortcuts so you can sort of pick between what it does. One of those shortcuts is opening the camera. So it just feels so empty, it feels so useless. It's really strange because Apple for the most part tends to implement great and actually quite useful features. There have been some duds over the years as well that haven't made it, like Force Touch, where you could press into the screen for added functionality. It was canned after a few generations and now you just hold down on something and it does exactly the same thing. And I think this camera control feature is going to go the way of Force Touch. It wasn't needed, no one asked for it, doesn't really add much value to the thing. If I'm honest, I just don't see this as a very Apple-like feature, and I feel like it's going to go in the next few generations of phones. This is not sticking around. That's my hot take of the day at least. It feels like they got a random to come in off the street and just pick something that would make the new iPhone sort of more interesting, because without it, it's honestly just not a big upgrade. I do like that they added Ultra HD 4K 120fps video, also available in ProRes Log, which if you know me, you know I really love that feature. Footage from this mode comes out incredible. I think it's the best smartphone video for pros, but in regular auto video, I think that might actually go to the Pixel now with its 8K video boost. But let me know in the comments if you want to see a proper head-to-head between those two, because Google is absolutely cooking with video right now. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max's cameras in stills are otherwise fantastic. Just like last time around, I haven't noticed any major quality issues, and there's certainly not a massive difference, especially with that ultra wide, despite the fact it has a new sensor underneath it. You're not going to notice a massive jump from last year. This is more of an upgrade from say a 13 Pro Max or maybe a 12 Pro Max. The photos and videos from this thing have heaps of dynamic range, great colors. You can use the photo undertones color palette to dial in the look just the way you want. Apple ProRAW is also a very solid feature for those who are really keen shutter bugs and just want a little more control in post. But most smartphones can shoot RAW these days, so it's not unique in that aspect. The 5x tele isn't the best on any smartphone for sure. It's a great feature to have, and I'm glad we now have it in the smaller iPhone, just like Google did with its smaller Pixel Pro, but it's not a truly elite camera for me. I think there are better telephoto cameras on the market. I won't bore you with ProRes Log and go on like I did in a previous video, but I do really like this feature, and it can now do Ultra HD 120 if you use an external SSD, which is a fantastic thing for pros to use. It's just great to have that unfettered ProRes image with the log format that doesn't have any dynamic tone mapping baked into the image. Are you really going to notice a major difference between a 16 Pro Max and a 14 Pro Max? For most people, probably not. This is not the major performance leap that previous generations have been, especially in the cameras, and I think for most people the Pixel is going to be the better camera, especially when you incorporate AI features. Because as much as Apple loved talking about its own AI suite in the keynote, this stuff doesn't come at launch for a lot of people. It won't actually come till next year, so that kind of puts a bit of an asterisk on this review. Included in this suite is a writing or text summary and a rewriting capability, a Magic Editor type competitor in the Photos app, voice note summaries and transcriptions, priority notifications, a Pixel Studio type thing called Image Playground, and a new Siri based on ChatGPT. This stuff isn't groundbreaking or anything that we haven't really seen before on the Android side, and it seems like Apple has fallen for the whole AI hype and will be aiming to compete with others on this front. It will come in the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max, so if you have those, you will get grandfathered in, but it comes with all the new iPhone 16 models as well, so if you're on the latest device, it doesn't matter which SKU you pick. But of course I can't review that stuff right now because it's not here at launch, so nice one, Apple. I have to say though, this phone is a phenomenal piece of kit. It's stupidly fast and should stay for a number of years if previous phones are anything to go by. My fiance has a 12 Pro Max and that thing is still rapid, so that's a 4-year-old phone. This should be at least good enough for another 4 years. The battery life increase is noticeable, but not at the level of sort of OnePlus 12, for example, or the Galaxy S24 Ultra for that matter. This is an all-day phone for pretty much every single person, I think, and it's a good day and a half to 2-day phone for some people too. It's really going to depend on what you do on your phone. I've never had any real issues with my recent escapade with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I don't give anyone else a pass here, so I'm certainly not going to give Apple one. The charging is straight up slow. So you might have heard the claims that the iPhone 16 Pro Max can do 45 watt charging. However, I haven't been able to stand this up, and the highest that I've been able to see it being drawn is about 30 watts. Given what my peers are also able to capture and record, that seems to be the going rate, about 30 watts or less. There's also the theory that it can do 30 watt charging and then also pull a further 15 watts if what you're doing on your phone is, say, gaming at a really high intensity and still want to charge the phone at the same time. But this is all rumors at this point. There is no real way for us to show that it can do 45 watt charging. So take that with a major pinch of salt, because I've seen the 45 watt number going around, but no one's really stood that up. The huge 6.9 inch Quad HD plus 120Hz LTPO OLED is generally very, very good, but I think the Pixel 9 Pro's is better. This gets mega bright, it looks stunning, it is a joy to use, it's very smooth, it's very responsive. I really like the iPhone screen, but Google's beaten them this year. And the design and build feels exactly like the 15 Pro Max. So very good, but I'm not a massive fan of flat sides at a device that's this large, though I will be running a case on this as my work phone, as I'm not risking damaging a $1,200 phone like that. But those of you who do spend 4 figures on a phone and don't put a case on it, power to you. Performance is class leading, but there's not really much to talk about because, you know, smartphone performance has been great for a number of years now, and Apple has been the kings of this for a good while too. It makes sense why their computer chips are just so good. But yeah, if you're a massive gamer, don't even worry about it. The iPhone can handle it, no dramas. Face ID is decent, and I haven't really noticed a difference from the previous model, but I myself am a fingerprint reader kind of person, so even like a fairly mid-range optical fingerprint reader is preferred to Face ID, but I know people who only like Face ID, and for that, Face ID is the best because it's just so secure compared to a lot of face unlocks on the Android side. Though not all, there are some good ones out there. Connectivity, speakers, buttons, iOS itself, it's all right up there with the best and nothing that stands out as game-changing. This is one of the best phones you can buy right now, but I think the Pixel 9 series has impressed me enough since I first got my unit that I might recommend one of those over one of these if you don't care about the whole iOS versus Android thing. Should you upgrade? Well, if you're on a 13 Pro or earlier, then I would consider it, but I wouldn't jump on it. Otherwise, I'd wait. Hot take, this camera control thing won't be here in 5 years, so someone pin this video and come back in half a decade. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I know Obviously, a lot of you aren't going to like it. It's not running Android, I know. But it's also good to look at what the competition are doing and just sniff out features that you might want on Android. Hit like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.